Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News, South Florida Conservative website, Sunday, May 18th. And those of you who have been watching online, the Democrat Party is openly lying about yet another topic. However, the Republicans that they've decided to attack are so moronic that they can't even bother to respond correctly. There's a couple of videos you'll see on this issue. Is our issue today is Medicaid and why this is a bunch of shit. Okay. And the videos you're going to see, there's a couple of the usual suspects from the squad and everything, and they're up there with their placards and this, that, and the other thing, saying how you're cutting Medicare and you're cutting Medicaid and you're cutting this and you're cutting that, and they want the names of these congressmen put out there, and the congressmen are saying you can't put my name out there because it's not part of Robert's rules at the point in that conversation. But really, the reason they don't want their names out there is not that they're guilty of anything, but probably don't know the topic that they're discussing at the moment. And most assuredly, in the current climate of insanity and assassination, they don't want some nut job equating their name with Medicaid, once again, Medicaid, and deciding to come by and put a bunch of bullets in their head. All right. So let's explain what's going on here. And I will tell you, if you go to southfloridaconservative.com, we also have the similar information with, of course, the legalities to back it up, which is not what the Democratic Party likes to use. They like to yell. They like to insinuate. They like to just make stuff up. Okay. And the thing right now is the Republicans are trying to cancel Medicare. All right. And everyone's like, what are you talking about? Medicare. Well, the reason they're talking about Medicare at first is because they're trying to soften up the older people to get them disinclined to vote Republican in the future. A lot of people are involved in Medicare. Medicare is sometimes the primary health care provider for older people. Medicare is not in play. All one would have to do is go online to the Congress or to the executive branch's site and look it up, but nobody can look things up anymore. That's part of the great thing of being an American is we just say what we want and boom, it pops into life, and that's how it is from now on. It's not true. People are going to end up getting killed over dumber shit than this. Trust me, you haven't seen the ugly face of socialist terrorism that is coming our way over the next 3 and some odd months, 3 years and some odd months. All right. And especially if they don't get the leash on these people early. First of all, no one is cutting Medicare, not the Republicans, not the conservatives, not what they call the hardliners, which are a bunch of effing jokes and traitors to the country. And we all know it. That's the neocon types and the ones who yell, get this, whatever, ethnic minority off of my lawn and all that shit. They realize that they're going to go down. They are all still semi-beholding to the Mitch McConnell types. And they figure if we don't circle the wagons, nobody's going to, right? No one is cutting Medicare. What's really going on is the Republicans, some of them through use of Doge especially, are trying to clean up Medicaid, all right, which is a completely different program. And it's hitting a nerve because of a couple of things we're going to talk about in a minute. You realize the majority of the reason that the Democrats have been successful over the years is they had this incredible embezzlement system running through the government where as long as they kept a certain amount of people in the House and the Senate, money flowed into their coffers through all these dumb grants and this and that and the other thing, NGOs. It was a constant self-improving system that allowed them to outgun the opposition all the time and to make inroads in other countries to continue this new world order nonsense. So, excuse me, I'm a little upset about this. All right. So what it is threatening to do with them cleaning this up is it threatens a cash pipeline that the blue states are using to fund free healthcare for illegal immigrants. So we've said that, okay? And that's the truth. That's right. They're yelling Medicare while they're hiding this Medicaid scam that they're involved in, Medicaid, under the table. So let's break this stuff down here. Medicare, I have to keep saying this because people, you have to get used to it. They really should never have named them this close. Medicare is a federal health program. It's for seniors that are 65 and older, people that are on disability, people like that, okay? You've paid into it your whole life through payroll taxes. You earn that money. Medicaid, with a D, on the other hand, is a joint federal and state program, and it's made for low-income Americans. But under Obamacare and progressive state policies, Medicaid has become, what can we call it, bloated, misused, fraud-prone, and it's been twisted to serve an open borders agenda. States like California, New York, and Illinois, Democrats are using state taxpayer money because Medicaid, with a D, is a combination of state and federal money. So Democrats are using state taxpayer money, which is your money. If you have a job, it's your money, to fund Medicaid-style services for undocumented immigrants. And that's what the whole game is. We got to keep these illegals here. We got to keep them fed. We got to keep them housed because their thought is eventually they'll make it so hard on the Republicans will say, the hell with it, let them stay here. The Democrats will get back in power and they will say, we are going to naturalize all these citizens. And now they have a permanent voting bloc that certain states will never not be under control of socialism. That's how it works. All right. So you have to be able to keep paying for them. Why should you not? And why should the government not pay for them? Because the Democrats had a system involved where they were just siphoning all this money off from the government, right? So they don't even hide the stuff that they do, all right? California, illegal immigrants of all ages can now get full scope, what's called Medi-Cal, I guess, for California. They've expanded it to seniors, adults, and teens. If you're in the country illegally, you are covered on the taxpayer dime. All you poor people in Oakland that are up there, that are Black or Spanish or whatever, that are here legally, this is for you. As far as the governor of California is concerned, you guys can all go back to wherever you're from or move to Idaho and let him repopulate your area with illegals. In the meantime, you got hospitals that are closing in rural America. Okay, wait times went up for veterans, and children born to citizens get bounced between clinics. Okay, so the Republicans, theoretically the Republicans, mostly the MAGA types, which there's all 10 of them, I think, left, they proposed work requirements, income verification, and the funding for non-citizens, and this will restore the integrity of Medicaid. So what did the Democrats do? They scream, you're cutting Medicare. You're cutting Medicare. But we're talking about Medicaid, two completely different operations, and they are completely financed in different ways. But nobody would be against cutting Medicaid fraud. They're afraid mom, pa, kettle over there living on the edges of the economy, and I know where you're coming from. They don't need their Medicare cut. So they've used the two terms interchangeably, and they're frightening a bunch of old people to try to get political gain. It doesn't sound too far off from them, okay? Basically, as a guy would say, it's like yelling fire in a crowded theater to distract people while you rob the cash register. Not a bad analogy there for an unknown person who sent it out to us. Can't give you the name because that's not how it works. So this just isn't about budget numbers. It's about priorities, okay? Plain and simple. Should your grandmother, who worked her whole life and paid into Medicare, have to worry about her benefits, which, you know, they do, while a 25-year-old illegal immigrant in LA gets a full set of dental work on the taxpayer dime? because Medicare has deductibles and things like that. Medicaid does not. So there's your grandmother, worked her whole life, has to still scrimp and scrape because she's on Medicare, whereas this illegal gets the whole thing done on the taxpayer dime. That is not compassion. That is betrayal. That is surgical tourism. Okay? It's being sold to you under the disguise of healthcare, justice, and equity. And it is a total lie. They're using your money, your healthcare system, and your goodwill to build a parallel system of welfare that rewards illegality over citizenship. It further is advancing the fact that the Democrats wish to disenfranchise, and by disenfranchise, I mean put your asses out of the street, all the poor people of all colors. They are equal opportunity oppressors. They will get you asses all behind the eight ball while they bring in all these other people, and they're not necessarily from Mexico. We have Africans and Chinese and everybody else and their grandmother showing up. Don't let it become that Mexican thing. It never was, and I blame Trump for never really redirecting it. But you know what? The Democrats were able to frame that argument. We have to live with it. Okay? That's all you can say about that. And so when they get called out, they hide the Medicaid ball, right? And pick up the Medicare cup. And they say, oh, look, the GOP is coming for your health care, right? It is a circus. It is a shell game. Okay? And they are running it. You have to learn when people are telling you stuff anymore. I used to say, well, we have to be courteous and you can't just say you're an asshole and this and that and the other thing. Those days are long gone. The shouting match that you see in the street for some reason all the time is the only way most people do business. And if they want to do business that way, then you really should, if I remember the John F. Kennedy School's teachings, is you meet their force with equal or greater force and things will happen. So what now? Okay. Know the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. So when people start boo-hoo-hooing, you say, shut up. That's a lie, right? And you just keep calling out the lies. When you see videos, unfortunately, because I'm an idiot, I'll spend a half an hour a day just going on and commenting on different videos on Instagram or on YouTube. Say, that's a total lie. I mean, and we'll be shameless. We'll put our own link there. I said, that's a total lie. Here's the truth. Do you get a lot of people that will look at that? Not really, but you know, it's like it's the thought that counts, because a lot of people are like, well, that's okay. We're not going to do that. And I can understand that's why some things do better than others. That's why like Charlie Kirk's organization does better, because he's out there in the field and people like to be part of a group. Online is not really a group. You're more like a sick wolf pack if you're lucky, right? Or something like that. Go play Minecraft. I don't know. World of Warcraft, whatever it is. That's a whole different thing than a live action construct. And that's why the socialists prefer to have these stupid ass protests all the time. It gets them out there live and it makes them feel a little bit better about their miserable existence. All right. So call out the lies when you hear politicians use one of these stories to shield the other. You demand accountability. These are all things that we always say. Demand accountability from your governors and state legislatures, especially if you live in California, New York, or Illinois. You can take a night off from going to see Hamilton. God knows, right? It's probably nobody in it from the original cast. And just say this, and you'll be fine. And most importantly, vote like your benefits depend on it, because they do. Because if the Democrats can continue to gain offices again, they will cut Medicare, because cutting Medicare destroys the American citizens, especially the citizens that are making under, I don't know, $50,000 a year combined on their retirement, and that'll be a number of them. All right. You'll see how quick people get out of doors if that happens. All right. That's what's going on there. And this isn't about denying health care. It's about restoring sanity. It's about restoring integrity. and citizenship to a system that was never meant to bankroll the world's driftwood. Okay? That's what it's all about. It was not designed for that at all. In fact, I don't think anything with the illegals or anything with migration had to do with Medicaid. Medicaid sometimes was a temporary thing. You know, you're on your ass and you're going to get better. The problem is that we have so many of these programs that were put together at a time period where people actually fought back from poverty or bad news, like the grapes of wrath, right? They fought back from the Dust Bowl and reestablished themselves. That's not in the American DNA anymore. That's why we have the problems we have. And that's why, unfortunately, as a 2A supporter, I have to say, people think hiding behind a fucking rifle is going to make things better in their country. It's not, because if you have to use it, what are you going to do? Right? Especially if you're not on the team that's in charge. So that's all I can say about that at the moment. Medicaid is rife with abuse. Medicare will not be touched at all. And tell grandma and grandpa I said hi. So that's about it. Have a good Sunday. Talk to you later.